Hey everybody, welcome back to PowerTech with your SEs. This is episode 6 of the show, first show of 2021. I'm Justin McKean, Solution Strategy Director at PowerSchool. I'm happy to have Kari Kmetz, who's joined the show many times before. She's also a Solution Strategy Director at PowerSchool. And we have a special guest today. This is Jeremy Tolan. So Jeremy is a Partnerships Manager at Spark Hire. And what we wanted to do was talk about the theme or the message of episode 6, which is how to overcome the challenges of virtual recruiting in 2021. We know that COVID has posed many problems. It unfortunately kind of has been a little bit of a theme of the show so far, but there are so many different ways that PowerSchool and of course partnered with Spark Hire can also help you in those conversations. So what we want to do today is take the thought leadership approach and just talk about some of the big picture items that we feel are crucial for districts like you that might be trying to figure out what are we going to do as far as bringing in new hires in 2021. You might be paper-based. How do we get away from paper? How do we provide a great first experience? We all know how a first impression has a lasting effect. So that as we bring new folks into the district, then we hopefully stay and keep them all the way through to retirement. So what I'm going to do is hand it over to Kari. She's going to run a lot of the conversation with Jeremy because she's more of a pro in this space than I am. And what I want to do is get her started with a question. So Kari, what is going on today in the world of recruiting that you have seen from your experience in working with districts across the country? And how do you see districts adapting?
Yeah, great question. So, we all know the obvious. We are still amidst a global pandemic here, and that has impacts on all of our areas of life, including recruiting new teachers and staff to join our buildings. So, one thing that's come up with the pandemic is that paper processes don't always work anymore. So we have districts that in the past have said, you know what, we're fine with having, paper printed applications, or they email them into us and we'll just run those around to the different buildings. And that's just harder to do when you're in a remote environment where maybe all of your staff is not actually in person within your buildings. We may not be able to facilitate that kind of a process anymore. And it's really pushed a lot of districts into how do we look at digitizing more of our recruiting and getting that to be a more streamlined process. So we have an applicant tracking system here at PowerSchool that would assist with doing that online application process and then routing and ensuring that the right people have access to those applications in real time online so they can get to them wherever they are. And then as your hiring process concludes, we kick off that onboarding process. And that's one that even more so than the application process, a lot of districts are still doing on paper. So we work with districts who have their big orientation day where all the new hires come in, they get handed that big stack of papers with your I-9 and your W-4 and direct deposit and all of those forms to complete, and they may be completing them in person. Well, what does that look like in an environment where we can't do our big orientation day anymore? We need a new way to facilitate that. And our record solution actually provides the ability to go through the process of completing all of those forms online and tracking all of the different types of tasks that are associated with onboarding. So when we talk about a welcoming onboarding experience, Justin, you mentioned that. I think about, if you show up on your first day and you can't get into your email and you don't have a laptop if you need one, like you're not equipped to have a successful and welcoming first day or first experience with the district. So how do we ensure that everybody knows about the things that need to be done for a new hire? And then how do we track and make sure that everything is ready before that new hire walks into the building? So those are certainly a couple of things that we've really seen. And, honestly, a lot of these changes are things that I think will be long-term. So even beyond the pandemic, even when we are back in person and doing things together, I think that a lot of these changes will be permanent. We're going to want to be more streamlined, more digital in the way that we process these things. Here at PowerSchool, we do a report if we survey a number of different educational professionals about a variety of things, all the way from recruiting to retention. And what we're seeing is that the data is showing that the teacher shortage is of top concern for education professionals right now. So we know that a teacher shortage existed in a lot of areas of the country even before the pandemic. And now, in the times of uncertainty where people don't know whether classes are going to be in person or online, that has really just made this teacher shortage even more even bigger. We're having a harder time. We're seeing districts having a harder time finding candidates to even apply for their positions, much less find the right fit for their buildings. And obviously provides a huge impact on the recruiting process. So while we here at PowerSchool can't create more teachers out of thin air, we do want to give you the tools that make it easier for you to identify and find the right fit candidates and be able to bring them in through a process that adapts to the age that we're in, which is a lot of what we're going to be talking about today with Jeremy. Speaking of Jeremy, one of the other steps that stats that we found from our research was that there has been a large increase in job fairs. From 2018 to 2020, we saw a 20% increase in job fairs being utilized to identify candidates, which this really actually surprised me, given that was done in 2020. We're in the midst of the pandemic, and job fairs are a top recruiting mechanism for our customers. And really, what we want to talk about first, as a part of this discussion with Jeremy, is how in the world do you go about doing a job fair when you can't have 250 people come to your gym and do interviews in person. So I know that, Jeremy, we've been working with some districts on how to facilitate this process, but can you just kind of walk us through what does it look like to even approach doing something like a job fair in a virtual world?
Yeah, really great data points. And first off, thanks for including me, Justin and Kari. I'm really grateful and excited to be able to participate and contribute to the conversation. But just like you were saying, the job fairs, they're a very important mechanism. Districts have really relied heavily on these career fairs as an effective way to source candidates, but there's obviously a lot of challenges because of the pandemic that didn't exist previously with holding these in person. And what I've noticed is that districts have been really innovative in their approach to be able to facilitate the career fairs, but just do them virtually. So what they've realized is that there's pretty much 3 key objectives that they need to accomplish to have a successful virtual career fair. One of them is that they need to have a good way to be able to gather initial applications or other important documents from candidates. Another is that they need to have an effective way to introduce some of their own team members to candidates too. And they also need to learn more about how candidates generally present themselves and kind of just get a quick introduction of the candidate too. So what they're finding to be an effective solution, they're using PowerSchool's Applicant Tracking to gather their applications and other important documents that they would want from the outset of this process. They've had an opportunity to introduce some of their own team members through the branding solutions on SparkHire, and a combination of both one-way and live video interviews have helped them learn a lot about candidates and generally how they present themselves to be able to make a decision following the virtual career fair, how they should proceed with that candidate in the hiring process. And really what districts have found from coordinating these virtually is that they're actually empowering themselves to sort through these candidates faster than before, so they can hand off their top candidates to the rest of the review committee much quicker. So they're able to make more collaborative decisions. They're able to get candidates through the rest of their hiring process faster following the job fair. And it's also just been a much more convenient experience for both candidates and the administrators that are participating in these events too.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm sure that, video interviewing may be a new concept for a lot of folks that are listening to this. So can you walk us through how districts are typically structuring their processes to incorporate video interviewing into their existing recruiting model?
Yeah, a second ago I mentioned one-way and live video interviews. So those are the 2 main types of video interviews that districts are using. And I think they're generally being used at different points in the hiring process. One-way video interviews are where a district can set up questions in advance, and then candidates can record video responses to them on their own time before a deadline, kind of like a selfie video. And those are most often used earlier on in the hiring process. So most districts will use this either to replace a preliminary phone interview or to supplement it, just to help shortlist those candidates for final round interviews. And districts who weren't doing any preliminary interviews before, they're also using one-way video interviews now for the same purpose, but they're able to shortlist these candidates really quickly with hardly investing much time into it at that point in the process. Usually a district will review resumes and maybe other important documents first when a candidate first applies. And then from there, they'll be able to shortlist candidates on which ones they actually want to invite to a one-way video interview. But occasionally some districts just have all of their candidates complete a one-way video interview when they first apply for a role too. what we found is that most districts that use Spark Hire, they're able to make their hiring process 5 to 7 times faster than before. For example, Amarillo Independent School District, they've explained that before they use Spark Hire, the amount of time that they're spending scheduling interviews, conducting them, and the amount of time they're spending outside of the classroom and outside of their office as an administrator, it would cost the district upwards of 2,400 hours per year. And that would cost them a little more than $100,000 per year. But since they started using Spark Hire, they've estimated that they only spend about 8 minutes per a preliminary interview with candidates, which has saved them about 270 hours per year, which is saving them a little more than $90,000 per year too. And what I think is really interesting about their process too is that usually there's multiple administrators that are involved with reviewing the video interviews afterwards. Sometimes there's as many as 11 collaborators that are reviewing these interviews. So the benefit of being able to collaborate around video recordings has been really effective for them to make really good hiring decisions a lot faster. And that other type of video interview is a live video interview, more like a face-to-face interview where you can connect with candidates in real time through a webcam or a mobile device. And those are usually used later on in the hiring process as more of a final round interview. And they're a really good way to connect with non-local candidates to reduce travel costs. But with everything that's happened with the pandemic, they've been a really great way to connect with candidates safely from a distance to still be able to do final round interviews too. So those are generally how people will structure their process to include video interviews.
And as I'm thinking back to, the teacher shortage that I know a lot of districts are focused in on, time is of the essence. If there's not as many teachers to choose from, you need to be able to act quickly on the candidates that would be a top fit for your organization. So as you were talking about how much time you save in the screening process by having those one-way video interviews available, I think that can really help address some of these concerns about the shortage of teachers that are out there, the ones that are coming through your door. How do we get to the right candidates the fastest? And, maybe having a quick way to review a one-way video interview is a great way to start. So that's definitely really interesting. Hopefully will be helpful to some folks out there. What about the candidate experience? Do you have any tips on how they can be improving their candidate experience using some of these tools as well?
Right, what you're saying is absolutely correct. It's so competitive and you don't really want to miss out on any top candidates. And I think part of improving the candidate experience is making sure that you're following up with them in a timely manner too, so that you don't miss out on those really good candidates. But something that I've seen a lot of districts doing too that I think is really effective is what we call video messaging. And that's a really good way to engage and attract top candidates. Video messages are essentially videos that team members at your district can record of themselves that you can send to candidates at different points in the hiring process. And they're usually included in an email. And a data point that I find really compelling was from a study that Lighthouse Research and Advisory conducted, where it showed that an initial email with a video actually receives an increase in click-throughs by 96%. And on top of that, viewers retain 95% of a message when they watch it in a video versus just 10% when reading it in a text. So you could see how effective video can be for providing a really engaging message for candidates. So a few ways that I think are really important for districts to use video messages is one of them is to record a video that highlights the opportunity to work at your district and include that in an initial email when candidates first apply. So you might send out an email when candidates first apply to let them know what the next steps are, thanking them for submitting their application. And you can include a video right in there too that's going to get them really excited about working at your district and maybe even about the specific job opportunity in particular. Another one would be to send almost like a thank you or a next steps video in an email after you conduct a final round interview with the candidate. So following your interview with the candidate, you can send them an email to let them know what the next steps are going to be in your hiring process, thank them for their time in doing the interview with you. And you could also include a video in that email to make it even more engaging and feel even more personalized for the candidate too. And then even at the end of your process too, you can include a video and an email when you're ready to make a job offer to a candidate. So usually when you make a job offer, you probably talk to the candidate over the phone. You might even do another virtual meeting to let them know about it. And then you send them an official email with their job offer. And in that email, I think it's really effective and it's going to be really memorable to candidates if you include a video message that congratulates them on the job offer, and just kind of expresses how excited you are for them to join your team. I think that creates a really memorable experience for candidates.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we've covered a lot already in terms of video interviewing, but any last thoughts on how that can really provide a strong and positive impact for districts?
Yeah, I think what's really impactful for districts in particular is that this could be a really good way to assess cultural fit and educators' overall teaching style, because you're going to get a really good glimpse of a candidate's qualifications and their specialty skills. And you're going to learn a lot about how a teacher is going to present themselves to students before you actually commit to a final round interview. So some districts might even ask educators to provide an example of them teaching a lesson through a video interview, which can be really effective. And other ones will ask situational interview questions during a video interview to learn a lot more about how a candidate's going to handle certain situations or communicate with students in those situations. So it's a really good way to learn a lot about candidates and their education style, their teaching style much earlier on in your hiring process too.
Yeah, definitely. Lots of good stuff there. And so thankful that you were able to join us, because the incorporating the video component into the recruiting process, I think, is going to be key, not only just right now in this current hiring season, but as we continue forward. So the partnership that we have with Spark Hire has really allowed us to give our customers the tools that they need in one spot to be able to facilitate this kind of an end-to-end recruiting process that works in a virtual world.
Yeah, absolutely. An awesome job. Appreciate you both going through all that with us. A couple things that stood out to me were, video. Anyone who knows me knows that video is something I'm passionate about, because I agree with what Jeremy's discussing, is having that ability to engage and impact with folks. And I love that. As a former teacher, the interview process for me was terrible. I never knew where I was in the process. Districts across my area, I never found one that let me know if I made it past round one, round two. It's always this waiting game. And that's what I love about the PowerSchool suite of applications, is we provide that, and it generally is in that text form that Jeremy was referencing. What I've learned today personally is that through the Spark Hire partnership, we can start to incorporate more video into those processes. The one-way interviews, having the live, all that stuff is so engaging. And we want that first experience to be really important, because again, it's going to have a lasting effect. It might be small, but it is going to have an impact as your teachers get started. And, the job fair idea, I was sitting here thinking to myself, like, man, I can't imagine what that's like virtually, just having the tools to be there. And that's what the goal of the show is, right? PowerTech with your SEs is to have real life conversations around scenarios that are challenging for districts across the country, and then bringing you some potential solutions. There are other opportunities out there, but we know our applications and how we feel that they relate to districts. So we always appreciate everyone joining the show. As always, we request that you like, share, subscribe. Make sure that you are having a chance to see our shows. We publish every 2 weeks. It's generally the second and fourth Tuesday of the month. Please provide any feedback, thoughts, topics that you'd love to see. Throw them out there. We all monitor to see what's going on. We don't get much engagement now, so let's get some help. Let us know what we could do differently, what topics you'd like to see. And again, we always thank you so much for your time. This was episode 6, PowerTech with your SEs. Have a great day, and we'll talk next time. See ya.